Yo, good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? This is your Coach Renz, and it is January the 3rd, 2018, and we are going to begin our study of the book, Outwitting the Devil. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history on this book for me. I've listened to the audio of this book for several years, over and over again, but what did not happen until October is that I actually read the first 2 chapters of the book. I've always skipped the first 2 chapters because I always just got to the beginning, because the beginning of the interview, mainly, I already know that he interviewed with Andrew Carnegie. I know the task that Andrew Carnegie sent him on, but what I never knew was the story that led him up to actually writing the manuscript of the Laws of Success, Think and Grow Rich, and the manuscript of Outwitting the Devil. But by reading it, I was able to connect with the entire book even more so. Why? Because what happened to him, I found many similarities in my life. You see, the first chapter of this book and the first 2 chapters will be free on YouTube and Facebook. The rest of them, 3 through the rest, will be on Patreon. So if you want to really dive deep into this book, you'll have to join us on Patreon. Now, here's the thing. My Patreon is only $5 a month. It's one meal. It's 1 cup of coffee. Okay? Which, speaking of cups of coffee, sweet elixir of life. The first chapter of this book is called My Meeting with Andrew Carnegie. The thing about his meeting with Andrew Carnegie is that it reminds me of my meeting with Mike Brenda. Mike Brenda, just like Carnegie, started out poor, became rich. Mike Brenda introduced me to the entire self-help personal development industry. Mike Brenda saw in me something I didn't see in myself, which Andrew Carnegie saw in Napoleon Hill that he did not see in himself. Napoleon Hill came to Andrew Carnegie to write an article about how he became successful to help pay for his college, to get him through college. I started working for Mike Brenda because I was looking for a foot into the IT industry. I had just became certified. I was teaching IT at a school, business school, after working for a little while in the IT field. And Mike Brenda met me and said that, and after meeting me the first day, said, "I want you to be my sales manager." I thought it was because I was upselling people in my classroom to the next class, or businesses to doing deeper, more classes. I thought that was the reason. And once he told me that my top salespeople will make more money than me as a sales manager, I thought, I want to be a salesperson. I don't want to be that. But what he explained, he said that your talent is winning others over and getting them to do far greater for themselves than they would normally do by themselves. Your talent is to help people to develop. And he was right at the time. I didn't understand the 80-20 rule, that 20% of whatever you do produces 80% of your results at the time. So when I went into it, I had 23 salespeople. My goal was to make all 23 senior sales executives. That was my goal. I didn't know. That was my intent. I went in with that intent, and in 6 months, 22 of them were all a senior sales executive. Now, true, 3 or 4 of them were my top, but each one were, and I figured out ways to make each one of them achieve their own personal goal. For instance, one young lady, she had issues with the English language, didn't have great command of it. I had her read and copy the dictionary and the thesaurus every day, 1 page a day. Within 60 days, she was a senior salesperson. Within 30 days, I noticed a change in her command of the English language. So it was finding things like that with people. But as life would have it, the school was sold because we grew so quickly. I found myself feeling disenfranchised because the new owners didn't have the same respect. I went to another school to work. This time, I wanted to be a sales executive. And I was doing very well, and we grew. And then the owners of the school figured out where me and another guy came from, Mike Brenda. And all of a sudden, he wanted to make us general managers, and he opened up 30 schools in 1 year and then filed bankruptcy. And after that, I felt so disenfranchised. I took a couple of IT contracts, but then I went from different company to company, forming my own companies. And there's something that I experienced that Napoleon Hill experienced. You see, before I get there, though, let me give you a little bit of the information that Andrew Carnegie told him. He said that basically, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, that people go to college, millions of people go to college every year, and the schools teach this abstract knowledge, but they don't teach how to apply it. but that somebody needs to have, we need to have the first practical understanding and philosophy of achievement organized in a factual knowledge gain, organized from the factual knowledge gained from the experience of men and women who have been in the great university of life. So this was his challenge, and he told him that this is a 20-year task, and during this 20 years you are to earn money on your own in different sources, because people who do these types of tasks are generally not celebrated until long after their death, which we know. Although Napoleon Hill became wealthy from Think and Grow Rich and his other books, we know that his recognition didn't truly occur till much later in life, and for the most part after he passed on. We know that his book, Think and Grow Rich, is widely the seminal foundational work for pretty much all your self-help and personal development gurus today. That even the information that I teach truly can be attributed back to Think and Grow Rich, but I will say I have discovered where that information came from as well, which is why you should go to my Patreon and study the Hermetic videos that we did. But Outwitting, whereas Think and Grow Rich was the conscious awakening for Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil was the spiritual awakening for Napoleon Hill. And as Bob Proctor said, that this book will change the world. And it has changed my life drastically, especially over the last few months, because there are many great changes I am undertaking right now. But he was told to go out and interview successful people, but more so to go out and interview people who we could deem as failures, because failures teach you what not to do. He interviewed over 25,000 failures, people who did not achieve their life goal, who were nearing the end of their life. He interviewed them, and these people taught him how they failed, what happened, so that he would know what not to do. This is the information he gained, right? But one of the things that Andrew Carnegie told him is that you will find that your greatest success happens at that point where your other self has to come out. And that other self generally don't come out until after you've experienced something great in your life that gives you your turnaround. You see, when I was a personal trainer, one of the companies that I floated to is I opened up my own personal training firm, my own gym. And one of the things I noticed is that if my clients did not have some emotional trauma that caused them to say that I will not endure this life, this body, this health condition anymore, they wouldn't turn. Now, many of them are calling me and they've just experienced it. They just experienced an auntie or a grandmother disrespecting them horribly at a Christmas function. They just experienced trying to get on the roller coasters with their kids, but they were too big and they were embarrassed to the point of humiliation. They experienced something. They were told that they had diabetes and they may have to be an amputee if they don't get control over it. Something traumatic. Their children beg and plead for them to do something. Otherwise, the kids are saddened because they think their parents is going to die. Something traumatic happens that generally causes people to make the shift, for the other self to come out. And we're going to talk about how Napoleon Hill's other self came out. You see, I've been homeless twice, but it wasn't traumatic enough for me to fully turn on into what it is that I know I should be doing. It turned me to do business, but to do business on the things I know I have talent to do, that I can do, but not for the thing that I truly am designed to do, that I have desire and purpose to do. And that's what Andrew Carnegie told Napoleon Hill's 20 years prior to his study. So he goes off and he does this study for 20 years. And he's, and Napoleon Hill told him that most real failures are due to limitations which man set in their own minds. And Napoleon Hill goes out, he does the study, he has the manuscript, he has the 17 principles to success. But what is going on in his life? Well, Napoleon Hill had a love for advertisement and salesmanship. So during that time frame, he got involved with many different companies, the LaSalle University and then of Chicago, that extension. But then he hated his job and resigned. He was lured back into advertising with the Bryant and Stratton Business College. But then he left that to go and help Woodrow Wilson to consult with him for World War I. and he left a thriving business. He started a magazine after the war, The Golden Rule. And even though most magazines fail rapidly and have to have a bunch of money, his did not, but he succeeded out the yin yang, and guess what? He walked away from it because he felt discontent and frustration. He then organized another school for salespeople and training, and that was making money, but then he wasn't happy, and so he left that, and that was providing him a healthy lifestyle. He was seeking all this happiness, but he could not find it because he was constantly doing something that was outside of his purpose. He was ignoring what his true purpose was. He was ignoring what his true calling was to do. And whatever yours is, you have to seek it out, and you have to know it in order to be able to find it out. Because if you're at work and you're feeling discontent, disenfranchised, you hate what you do, then that's not where you should be. Think about it. You're spending most of your days, your life there. You shouldn't be there if that's how you're feeling. I understand the feeling. But he said that every attempt he made to work his way out of his issues brought him back to the original point. I've told many friends of mine that throughout my life, throughout my business life, my career life, especially after working for Mike Brenda, I had a kiosk in the mall. It grew, making good money. Wife started complaining about the time that I was gone, shut it down. Opened up a janitorial service, working all night, sleeping during the day, going out doing some marketing in the afternoon, making money, not spending much time with my kids, shut it down. Start working in IT, hate it, making great money, hate the work, can't stand the work. The only time I liked it was when I was a teacher. Because why? I'm helping others to achieve their goals. I'm helping others to change their life and change their careers, I got guys who had no education, barely got a GED, getting into IT, and all of a sudden finding themselves being able to provide for their families at levels they never could before. I enjoyed that. But then the IT bubble burst. I become a personal trainer. Why did I love being a personal trainer? Because I'm changing people's lives. I'm coaching people into changing. And I used to tell people, you can control your body, you can control your life. If you can change your body, you can change your life. This was the mindset that I would impart to my clients. But doing that, after a while, I got burnt out. I was spending so much time away from my kids that I didn't get to see them that much. That I only saw them on the weekend is how much I worked. I left the house early in the morning, came back late at night, and I didn't work weekends just so I can spend it with my kids. I got burned out. But I loved it because I was helping people. When I opened up Uncle Ren's Popcorn, it was great because I was hiring a bunch of young people who needed guidance and needed to be mentored. But I never realized during all this time that my discontent was always because the only time I wasn't discontent is when I was mentoring and helping, when I was coaching. That's when I wasn't feeling the discontent and hatred. Once that was out the window, once I wasn't doing that, once I had a boatload of fitness clients who were just maintaining and my book was full and I couldn't bring in enough new people to give me that high again, I start feeling like I don't like this anymore. Once I had my employees working and everything was going great and life was changing and they would go and they would find them great jobs and then I would get other people, it just wasn't the same. Something about it, and I recognize that now. Over the last 4 to 5 months, I've become to the realization of why I find that discontent. I had that mall in the kiosk, and I was making $8,000 a month, right? But, and I'm talking in the late 90s, I'm making $8,000 a month, but I wasn't happy. I was sitting in that mall reading books all day, then selling sunglasses, watches, and candles. But I wasn't happy. But then something happened with Napoleon Hill. He found himself in a desperate situation. But then he said that he suffered with the worst of all human ailments, indecision. That he knew the 17 principles of personal development, but what he did not know was how to apply them. I've known the Hermetic laws, I've known about chakras, I've known about success. Mike Brenda turned me on to all the self-help gurus back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I knew all the information, but how do I apply it was always the problem. And then I began to understand that over the last couple of years of how to apply. But the hardest thing is breaking your old habits. So it's taken much time to start really breaking habits enough that, and still there are certain habits still there, to break habits enough so that you start moving in the momentum, start gaining momentum in the direction that you should be following. So don't look at it as an overnight deal. See, many of you have made New Year's resolutions, but they're not resolutions because you're not resolute to do them yet. You have to learn how to break your old habits if you want to have newness. If you want to have a new habit, the old habit must die first. So, but his distress was so great that it never occurred to him to sit down and analyze the cause and to seek the cure. You see, so, but then what happened? His defeat was converted into a victory. He walked for miles and miles and miles, thinking. How am I going to do this? How am I going to figure this out? How am I going to get myself out of this situation, right? And then it hit him. His other self woke up the first time, and I'm going to say the first time because it's 2 awakenings that he had. His other self woke up the first time, and this may have happened to you before. And it woke up and it said that, hey, you had a task that is incomplete. You were tasked 20 plus years ago to get this information, write it down, and present it, but you have not yet to do it. So in realizing that, he goes home and he starts writing the manuscript. He puts the information together, right? And he gets it all done, right? And so he says, this is what his other self told him when the first awakening. You have been trying in vain to escape your task, each effort having brought you failure. You are seeking happiness, learning this lesson once and forever, that you will find happiness only by helping others to find it. You have been a stubborn student. You had to be cured of your stubbornness through disappointment. Whatever it is your task, not the one you make up, not the one that sounds all good and altruistic. What is your task? It may be to have the best restaurant, the best soup ever, and to make that your business, and whatever you do to provide for people, charities, whatever you do after that is fine. But whatever your task, whatever your greatest talent, your passion is for, it is for you to go do it. And until you do, you will meet with only limited success and mostly disappointment. That's why he says, go to work and do not stop until you have completed what it is that you are purposed to do. Now, what happens to many people at this time when they make their New Year's resolution? The spell goes away. It was like a spell, pixie dust, cast it on your head, and then all of a sudden you feel like, la-di-da, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it done. Wee-hee-hee, and all that stuff. But then reasoning starts. You see, Mike Brenda had told me the way of who I was supposed to be. He had taken me to certain conferences where there were certain people up there on the podium speaking, and he saw it in me. He saw me looking at those people like, I want to be there. I want to be on that side looking at me. I want to do what they are doing. He saw it and he gave me all the instruction. He gave me all the books. He gave me everything that I was needed. He sent me about programs that Les Brown was having in Miami, and I was in Tampa. And he was sending me all kind of programs and things I can do. And I felt like he was getting on my nerves. So I saw it. He saw it. And I knew it. But then reason. And I wrote my first book. But then reason. I wrote that first book, and I was out while I was on the IT contract, and I was selling. I sold like a couple thousand copies of this first book of How to Escape Mental Welfare. But then emotions and doubt and fear starts to get in the way. And that's what happened with Napoleon Hill. Shortly after writing the manuscript, fear jumps in, doubt jumps in, reasoning jumps in, and he finds alibis. So what does he do? He succumbs to the lure of it. And he goes and he gets back and he purchased the Metropolitan School of Business College in Cleveland, Ohio. And after a short time frame, he starts to hate it. And in that hating this, my recorder did something crazy. So one night he's giving this lecture. So he's hating it. One night he's giving this lecture. And in the lecture, he said he meets a man, a Mr. Millet. Millet says, hey, he is the writer. He writes in a magazine, a daily news article, a daily news magazine, daily news paper, and he was exposing the corruption between the Canton police and the Prohibition, the bootleggers. Well, him and Mr. Miller are supposed to get together and really push his manuscript, but unfortunately, Mr. Miller is murdered, It is the night, July of 1926. His murder is huge. It makes national news. But he's murdered. But Napoleon Hill is threatened. His life is threatened. Told that if he don't leave Canton, Ohio, within 1 hour, that he will be murdered himself, because they thought he had something to do with Miller's expose. But so he leaves. He runs away. He runs to West Virginia. Right? He's hiding. Here is the second emergency. The emergency that Mr. Carnegie talked about. And at this point, Hill was filled with so much fear that he felt like he couldn't move. This fear started to grow in him every month by month. Even when the murderers were put in prison, this fear was so ingrained in him that he said it was like quicksand. And quicksand is talked about as the more you struggle, the more you do to try to get out of quicksand, the deeper you seem to sink, the faster you seem to sink. You see, the more I try to run away from what I am tasked, what I am given, what I am purposed to do, what you are purposed to do, the deeper it seems to go. I always told my friends, I said, it always feels like I'm riding high, and then some calamity happens, and I sink low, and I'm climbing out, and as soon as I get that one hand right outside the hole, I sink low again, and I'm climbing out, I'm using the principles, I know how to do it. I got the talent, I got the know-how, I'm getting there, I'm gonna start this business, and I get there, and as soon as I'm out of the hole, boom, here I go again, and I'm climbing again. It's the same repetitive thing over and over again, and this is how he was feeling, like he was in quicksand. But see, when you get fear in you like this, it's worse than a quicksand. This is going into the dark side of the forest, but not being able to leave. This is being stuck in a rut of depression and not being able to get out. This is what Napoleon Hill was feeling. He would walk out of his house holding a gun inside of his jacket. A car stops in front of the house. He would peek through the basement. He would run down to the basement and peek through the window to evaluate, is it someone after him? This is even after the original the criminals are in jail. But this fear gripped him to such a state. It made him feel like that he was one of those 25,000 failures that he had interviewed, that for all the talks that he had given, that he was a charlatan for telling people how they can be successful, but yet here he was, gripped by fear. You've been gripped. You've looked in the mirror and you said to yourself, you are not worthy. You are not the person that people think that you are. You don't have the talent to go out there and do this, express this, say this, build this, do that. Who's going to buy your soup? Who's going to buy your clothing? Who's going to buy anything that you have to offer? Who's going to promote you? Who's going to allow you to take the classes inside the company and recognize your value and promote you? Who's going to do that? Not you. You've looked in the mirror. You said that to yourself. And it becomes somewhat of an emergency within you. This is where Napoleon Hill had his dramatic moment. This is where I've had my dramatic moment. You see, Napoleon Hill had a moment where he said, I had to reach a decision to fight the matter out with myself before the night ended. This is where you spend all night wrestling with an angel. This is when you spend all night wrestling with your demons. This is when you spend all night tossing and turning, all night walking, all night figuring this out, all night asking yourself, there's a way out, and I'm going to find it before I go home. There's a way out, and I'm going to find it before I wake up. There's a way out, and I don't care if I dislodge my hip. I'm going to keep fighting until I find my way out. This is what he was going through. This is what he had to do. Right? And you have to mean exactly what you say. You see, if you're just saying it flippantly, it doesn't work. You have to say this with the full intent of resolving the question. When you say it with that intent of resolving the question, guess what happens? You get an answer. Your other self comes out. That part inside you speaks to you. That part, that goddess inside you speaks to you. Whatever you believe, that God up there speaks to you. That angel on your shoulder speaks to you. It comes to you. The universe makes itself known to you at that moment. And that's what happened with Napoleon Hill. The universe, God, the God inside, God is inside, spoke to him and let him know. It told him that when men are forced to change their habits and to think their way out of difficulties, that's when the other self speaks up. That's when the other self comes out. And he took himself to that point where he said that, all right, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to live this information that I've been teaching. I'm going to become what it is I have said, that the success that I have said you can become. He paraphrased a poem. It's the Invictus poem, where it says, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever God may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That was in his mind. That was in his spirit. That was in his soul at the moment that his other self began to speak to him. What is in your soul at the moment your other self speaks to you? When will you move as you should move? When will you do as you should do? When will you go head bludgeon? Doesn't matter. You will not bow down to the fear of accomplishing the task that you have been designed to accomplish. When will that happen for you? Or has it happened for you? And if it has, do not stop until the work is completed. You see, so that's what Napoleon Hill came to realize. And the thought came from his other self and gave him commands, and it told him what to do. Though it told him to go to Philadelphia. It told him to borrow $25 from his brother. $50 from his brother-in-law. It told him where to stay. It told him what to do in order to find out who to call to help him publish his manuscript. That other self took over, and the thing about it, as long as he followed the other self, which he called faith, as long as he followed his other self, now you may not call it faith. You may call it something else. You may call it your gut. You may call it your intuition. You may call it the God or goddess inside. You may call it whatever you call it. But when that other self gives you commands of what you should do, it doesn't matter what other people think. And there are many people you should not tell. Now, he asked his brother for that money, but he did not tell his brother-in-law what it was what told him to ask and what told him to go to Philadelphia, because he knew they would not understand. So it is not for you to tell everyone. Only those. Wait for your other self to tell you who to tell. If your other self don't tell you who to tell, don't tell it. Keep it to yourself. Just keep moving. Follow instructions. Stand at attention. Give a salute and move on. That's what you do. That's what we do in the Marine Corps. We stand at attention. We give a salute and we follow the orders that we've been given. These are sound orders. So you follow the sound order of your inner self. So he realized he had to get his mind off any thoughts of negativity. Every time a negative thought comes into his mind, every time doubt comes into your mind, you have to release it. You let it go, move forward. You have to replace it with the command that you were given. Every time your doubt says, or your reasoning starts telling you that, oh, you can't coach these people. Oh, you can't speak to these people. Oh, nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to buy this. Nobody's going to respect you. Nobody's going to be attentive to you. People are going to look at you funny when you're in the gym trying to work out. Every time you have that, replace it with the command that you've been given. The command that told you what to do. The command that told you to get out there, to get out of your own way. Replace it and keep moving forward. And you should know that this entity is inside you. Nobody's going to recognize the difference in your body, your physicality. You're going to look the same, like the same person, but your activities will change. Your activities change and your mind changes, and you keep moving forward. As long as you're doing this, then you will start moving and start receiving the I don't want to say blessing. You'll start receiving the rewards. You'll start receiving the rewards, because this is not something that is outside of the laws of nature. This is not something that's outside of the natural law of things. This is not a bunch of miracles and things like that that are going to start happening in your life. This is just you are applying the natural laws of the universe to affect your current state, your current environment. You see, all he did, the only thing that happened in all of this, in all of his experience, is that the fear motivated old self did not die, but was dethroned. The fear part is sitting, awaiting for an opportunity to step back up on the throne. As long as he doesn't allow it to step up, as long as he keeps his mind focused on not being filled with doubt and fear, then he doesn't have to worry about that situation. He doesn't have to worry about fear stepping back on the throne again and taking over and causing him to become distracted, causing him to get back in quicksand and falling away from what it is that he is supposed to do, what you are supposed to do. So as long as you don't allow that fear, you will continue to move in a position of courage. You'll continue to move in a position of faith. You'll continue to move in a position of being fearless, because fear is your enemy. Fear puts you back in that quicksand. And like I said, his mindset changed. Upon his mind changes, upon him start walking around saying to himself and acting in the way of someone successful, showing the persona of a successful person, as long as he started doing that, he started receiving what a successful person receives. You see, he changed his mind, which manifested a new environment for him. That new environment manifested new people. Those new people manifested his desire to publish The Laws of Success, Outwitting the Devil, Think and Grow Rich, and many other books since then. But that was his first experience from his meeting with Andrew Carnegie. Now, let me give you one warning. I am not saying that you should go out and buy a $2,000 suit. I'm not saying you should go buy brand new cars. I'm not saying go fake it till you make it. None of those kinds of things. I'm saying you have to be mindful of what you have and what you're able to do. But what you do need to do is make your environment as such that when you look in the mirror, the person that looks back at you is someone you're proud of. The person that looks back at you is someone who is moving forward and achieving their goals and their success. Not someone that is filled with doubt, not someone you argue with, someone that you say you are a charlatan, but the person that's looking back at the mirror is someone who says you are a man or woman of courage. You are a man or woman who is walking strong with an inner strength that people will gravitate towards, and together you will all move forward and achieving your task, achieving your goal. When you look in the mirror and you see that person, then your inner self, your other self is speaking to you, and follow those instructions. So that's the part of the first chapter. So I hope you guys join us on Patreon, because we're going to get much deeper. That's just the first chapter. We haven't even gotten to the interview with the devil. So join us on Patreon, and remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.